Well, joining me now to talk about another aspect of the trade war, its impact on working class consumers, is Stephen Kyle. Stephen is an associate professor at the S.C. Johnson College of Business at Cornell University. Thank you for joining us.
Happy to be with you.
So as we take a look now, how do President Trump's various trade fights differ from each other?
Well, originally, the Chinese tariffs were intended as a prod to get China to agree with Trump's and the U.S. positions in the trade negotiations. And that has been viewed by most professional economists who aren't on a politician's payroll as a very bad way to get the things that we might legitimately want China to do, such as paying more attention to intellectual property rights, and there are some other issues as well. But these tariffs hit the poor and low-income consumers disproportionately. Your previous segment looked at cheap goods in Chinatown and in other retail outlets, and the people who buy those kinds of goods are predominantly lower-income people. And we could add to that the farm populations in the middle of the country who are the subject of what generally is regarded as inevitable retaliation against U.S. exports, many of which are farm products. So the pain in the United States is not huge compared to GDP. 25% of 200 or 300 billion does not add up to a large number compared to the overall gross domestic product.
Right.
But for those people who are hit directly, it can be quite a bad thing.
And obviously, other than the US-China trade dispute that's now morphed into including individual companies, you also have these tariffs now imposed on Mexico over migration issues on the southern US border. And of course, the EU also expecting more problems with the US over metals tariffs, autos, and subsidies for aircraft manufacturers. As you look at these different situations, which of these do you think is likely to have the biggest and most immediate impact on consumers?
Well, certainly the Chinese tariffs will have an impact fairly quickly because the burden of this is going to be passed on to consumers as soon as the items in the supply chain get to that point. However, I have to say the addition of Mexico to this overall trade war has made all of us reconsider really what's going on here. A week or two ago, I would have said to you that though I don't agree with Trump's methods, there was an unintended effect of starting a trade war with China, of moving production to Mexico to take advantage of their presence in the North American Free Trade Agreement. Well, you have to throw that one out the window now. It's just not the case anymore that people feel safe, that companies feel safe moving production to Mexico, because even though we signed a new free trade agreement with them, within the last month, they now have to contend with the idea that even though we signed it, we're going to impose tariffs anyway. And so we now have to wonder if Mr. Trump really does have an overall strategy, and if so, what is it?
Now, obviously, the administration is saying, look, these costs aren't going to affect everyday people. It's really just to put pressure on these countries. But what are your thoughts as to how this affects lower-income consumers versus, say, some of these higher-end consumers as well?
Well, if you go to Walmart, which is the biggest retailer in this country, a large percentage of the goods in Walmart comes from China, and they promote themselves based on low prices. I mean, all of us here in the United States have heard that ad 1,000 times. Those low prices aren't going to be as low if this dispute continues and these tariffs are imposed, and in fact, if they're broadened to include more products.
Now, we know that the National Association for Business Economics brought back these recession fears that they're predicting because of these protectionist policies, that the U.S. could be looking at another recession in 2020. How prepared are retailers or even everyday Americans to really face another potential recession?
They're not. And ordinarily, you would say that a simple trade dispute really wouldn't be what made or broke a recession. But to be honest, we are somewhere near the peak of the business cycle anyway. And it is rather mysterious to economists and everyone else what exactly it is that tips an economy over into recession. But whatever that is, increasing uncertainty in trade and in relations with our allies and biggest trading partners is a very bad thing and contributes to unease on Wall Street. Certainly the volatility in the stock market is an indication that people who are observing this don't like it and really are wondering what it is that's going to happen next.
Indeed. Stephen Kyle, thank you so much. Associate Professor at the S.C. Johnson College of Business at Cornell University.